Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. Grab a drink, sit down, and brace yourself. This isn't a love story. This is what happens when a single sentence detonates nearly 4 decades of silence. I need to tell you something before I forget how to be honest. That's the sentence that turned my living room into a courtroom. No music, no warning, just that sentence. Cold, jagged, and somehow louder than anything I'd heard in my life. I didn't even look up from the remote at first. I thought Lorraine was talking to herself. She does that sometimes when she's nervous. Mumbles while folding dish towels or feeding the cat. But this time she wasn't talking to the air. She was talking to me, and her hands were shaking. She didn't sit. She stood behind the armchair like she needed something to hold her up. I knew that posture. I'd only seen it twice in my life. Once when her brother died, and once when our daughter backed into a stop sign and called her crying. I muted the TV. The room went quiet, only the sound of the fridge buzzing in the kitchen. Then she said it again, slower this time. I need to tell you something before I forget how to be honest. And suddenly I knew. Not the details, not yet. But I knew this wasn't going to be about taxes or a forgotten birthday. This was bigger, deeper. The kind of truth that grows teeth when it's left alone too long. She walked around and sat at the very edge of the couch. Didn't even look at me. Just stared at her knees and said, "It started the week after our anniversary. Our second one. I never meant for it to happen. But it did. And it wasn't just once. And no, it wasn't just emotional. I thought it would fade. But I kept going back. No names. No excuses. Just that. The air in the room felt sharp. My fingers went numb. I opened my mouth but couldn't find a word that didn't sound pathetic or rehearsed. And still she kept going. I should have told you years ago, but every year that passed made it harder. And I told myself if I just loved you well enough, maybe it would cancel it out. She finally looked at me. I need you to hear the rest of it, Curtis. But not here. Not while the cat's watching. Not while the TV is paused on a cooking show. Not like this. Then she stood, took the keys, and told me to meet her at the place we had our first date. I didn't move for 5 full minutes, because something in her voice told me, whatever she was about to say next wasn't going to break me. It was going to redefine me. I parked in the exact same spot as I had 39 years ago, back when I was just a nervous kid with a second-hand tie and a mouth full of rehearsed compliments. Lorraine had chosen the restaurant, Marston's on Elm, though now the sign just said Marston's with half the lights flickering. The ivy on the brick walls had grown wild. The windows looked aged, fogged with time and memory. But inside, the same faint smell of garlic and lemon still lingered. Same booths, same low jazz hum, same corner table where we once made promises under candlelight. Only this time, she wasn't holding my hand across the table. She was holding my history hostage. She'd arrived before me. That never used to happen. She hated waiting, always said it made her feel exposed. But tonight, she looked like she'd been there for hours. Hair done up like she was meeting a lawyer. A yellow legal pad sticking out of her purse. She didn't smile when I approached. Just nodded like this was a business meeting and I was late. "Thank you for coming," she said, as if I had a choice. I sat across from her, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. I could hear the clink of a fork 3 tables down. A server dropped a glass. Someone laughed near the bar. It all felt obscenely normal. And then she slid a folded napkin toward me. Something wrapped inside. "It's not what you think," she began, eyes locked on mine. "It's worse." I didn't unwrap it right away. Couldn't. My fingers weren't working properly. She started talking before I asked her to. Like she'd practiced this monologue 1,000 times and it had finally clawed its way out. I didn't cheat once. Or twice. I stopped counting after the 3rd year. It wasn't love. It wasn't romance. It was escape. From routine. From expectations. From being the version of myself I promised you I'd always be. I was addicted to the relief of being someone else for a while. I just blinked. Nodded. The room tilted slightly, but I didn't show it. I couldn't afford to show it. Not yet. Then she whispered, And the part that will hurt most? You know, one of them. You've shaken his hand. More than once. My heart stuttered. I knew where this was going, but I prayed I was wrong. Open it, she said, motioning to the napkin. Inside were 3 photos. Printed. Glossy. Clearly dated. Her. Him. A beach house I didn't recognize. One picture had them laughing on a porch swing. Her legs curled on his lap like she hadn't a care in the world. I looked up. Lorraine was already crying. Quiet, slow tears. No drama. No denial. You invited him to our house, Curtis. You poured his wine. You trusted him. And just like that, the room went silent in my head. I had poured that man's wine. I had asked him if he was seeing anyone. And apparently he was my wife. I didn't storm out. I didn't throw the photos or raise my voice like some betrayed husband from a soap opera. I just sat there, staring at a face I used to trust, trying to understand how I had become the only person in the room who hadn't known the truth. My heart wasn't racing. It was slowing down, thick with disbelief, like it was waiting for a reboot. Lorraine kept reaching for her water glass, never drinking, just holding it like a prop. I wanted to ask who the man was, but I already knew. The second she said I'd poured his wine, it clicked. Dorian Greaves. Dorian. Freaking. Greaves. My old coworker. Not quite a friend, but close enough. The guy who used to call me brother at backyard parties and compliment Lorraine's cooking a little too loudly. I remembered the way he hugged her once. Too long. I remembered the jokes he made that only she laughed at. And I remembered brushing off every single moment because I thought, no, not them. Never them. I thought I was just being insecure. Turns out I was being blind. He came to me when things were quiet between us, Lorraine said carefully, like she was choosing each word to avoid triggering a bomb. You were working those double shifts. The kids were young. I felt invisible. He noticed me. I laughed. This short, dry cough of a sound that made her flinch. So, what? You cheated because I was too tired from feeding our family? No, she whispered. I cheated because I was selfish. Because I wanted something I didn't deserve. I'm not justifying it. But you hid it for 37 years. I was afraid you'd leave, that the life we built would fall apart. And now, she looked at me with something like pity. Now I'm afraid you'll stay and never look at me the same way again. For a moment, I felt like I was floating just above my own body, watching myself sit there, watching the man who used to think loyalty earned safety. And that's when it hit me. Maybe she hadn't just betrayed me then. Maybe every dinner, every birthday card, every late-night smile since had been built on the hope that I would never look too closely. And I didn't. I loved her too much to question her. I was the kind of husband who ironed his own shirts so she wouldn't have to. The kind who drove out at 11 p.m. when she had a craving. The kind who believed her silence meant peace. But peace had been a mask. Is he still in your life? I asked, forcing the question through gritted teeth. No, she said too fast. Not in years. Does he know you're telling me? She hesitated. He warned me not to, said it would ruin everything. And he would know, wouldn't he? Since he helped ruin it. I stood, finally. My knees ached more than usual. I'd never felt older than I did in that moment. I left the photos on the table. You had 37 years to tell me, Lorraine, I said without looking at her. But I guess the truth was never really ours. Just yours. And his. She didn't follow me out. She didn't call. And as I stepped into the night air, something inside me cracked. Not loud, not explosive, just a quiet shift. The sound of a man beginning to understand he may have been alone long before he ever knew it. I didn't go home that night. Couldn't. I drove aimlessly for hours, circling neighborhoods I didn't belong to, passing gas stations I didn't need. At some point, I ended up at a 24-hour laundromat. It was empty, except for the buzzing of fluorescent lights and a woman asleep in a chair with her laundry still in the dryer. I sat in the corner, watching the tumble of clothes that weren't mine, pretending I had somewhere to be, that I hadn't just lost my grip on reality. That the woman I'd slept next to for 37 years hadn't handed me a truth so sharp it might never stop cutting. When I finally walked into the house, the clock on the microwave said 3:04 a.m. Lorraine's car wasn't in the driveway. Maybe she'd gone to her sister's. Or maybe she was doing what I should have done years ago, running. I went to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. Really looked. And I saw a man who had built a life on autopilot. Who had ignored red flags because he wanted peace more than clarity. Who had told himself, "She chose me. That means something." But what does that even mean when part of her had always belonged to someone else? I sat down at the kitchen table with a legal pad. Lorraine's legal pad. She had left it on the counter, probably forgetting in her panic. I wasn't sure why I opened it. Maybe I thought I'd find a script or a list of excuses or some kind of timeline. What I found instead was a list of names. 10 of them. 10. Each name had a year next to it. Not 2. Not 3. 10. Couldn't breathe. I knew 2 of them. Not well, but enough. One was a former neighbor who helped us build our deck. The other, a guy from church. The one who always said, "You've got a gem, Curtis. Don't let her go." I thought he was just being kind. Was I a joke to them? Had I always been? A sound came from upstairs. Floorboards creaking. I froze. I wasn't alone. I crept to the stairs and listened. Silence. Then another step. "Lorraine," I called out, my voice barely recognizable. No answer. I grabbed the nearest thing I could use as a weapon, an umbrella, and walked up. My heart was slamming in my chest. The guest room door was cracked open. I pushed it with the tip of the umbrella. The room was empty, but on the bed was an old shoebox. I hadn't seen it in years. The one we used to keep wedding keepsakes in, ticket stubs, notes, a napkin from Marston's. But this time it held something different. Letters. Dozens of them. All addressed to her. All signed with initials I didn't recognize. I opened one. Then another. Then a third. And in those pages I found a version of my wife I had never met. Passionate. Reckless. Cruel. She talked about me like I was a stranger. Placeholder. A man who meant well but never really got her. I wanted to scream. I wanted to set the box on fire. But mostly, I wanted to ask, why didn't she just leave me? Why build a life with someone you pitted? Downstairs, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Lorraine. "Don't hate me. I'll explain everything in the morning. There's more. Much more." I didn't respond. Because in that moment, I wasn't sure if I wanted more answers, or if I could survive them. Morning came, but nothing felt new. The sun spilled into the kitchen like it had every day for the past 3 decades. But this time, it felt like an intruder. Shining light where I didn't want it. The box of letters sat on the kitchen table. I hadn't touched it since I found it, afraid of what else it might contain. My phone was still buzzing. Lorraine had sent 4 more texts and left a voicemail that I couldn't bring myself to listen to. She said she was coming home at 9. I don't know why, but I stayed. Maybe part of me still hoped for a version of the story that would make sense. That would explain how the woman who once cried during our daughter's high school graduation could carry on secret lives like they were hobbies. At 9:12, the front door opened. Lorraine stepped in, holding a thermos and 2 coffee cups from a shop I didn't recognize. Her eyes were swollen, her voice soft. She placed 1 cup in front of me like we were about to talk about bills or groceries. "I know about the list," I said flatly before she could speak. "And the letters." She sat down, but not across from me. She took the seat beside me, like we were still partners. Like I hadn't just learned I was sharing her with half a directory of strangers. "I figured you found it," she whispered. "You always find the things I try to bury." That line hit harder than she probably intended. 10 names, Lorraine. 10 men. Was I a game to you? "No," she said quickly. "No. Curtis, it was never about you not being enough. It was about me not being real. Not knowing who I was without someone else telling me." I shook my head. "So you found yourself in other men's beds?" She looked away. "I thought if I confessed the first secret, the one with Dorian, you'd walk away. But when you didn't." Panicked. "I thought maybe you could handle more." So I left the notebook out. On purpose. I blinked. You wanted me to find it? I didn't want to keep lying, she said. I couldn't anymore. It's like I was living two lives, and both of them were starting to collapse. I stared at her. The honesty in her voice now was terrifying. It was too clean, too practiced. I wasn't the only one lying, she continued. There's something I never told you about Anna, our daughter. My chest tightened. What about Anna? She hesitated. She's not biologically yours. I felt everything in me freeze. Curtis, listen. She's your daughter. You raised her. She loves you like her father. You are her father. I stood up so fast the chair nearly tipped over. I pressed both palms against the counter, trying to steady the spinning in my head. You lied to me about everything, I whispered. No, she said, standing now too. I told you because I want to fix this. I want to rebuild whatever's left. Please, please don't walk away. I turned and looked at her, really looked, and I saw someone I didn't recognize anymore. Someone who'd been living behind a mask of devotion while building walls I never saw. And yet, part of me still wanted to believe there was a version of us that wasn't rotten. You said there's more, I muttered, almost daring her. She nodded, her voice trembling now. There's something I need to show you. Something I've hidden for over 30 years. If you still want answers, you'll come with me. I didn't know what terrified me more, that there was more to know or that some part of me still needed to hear it. She reached into her purse with shaking hands and pulled out a small brass key on a worn leather fob. It looked ordinary, almost fragile, like something from a forgotten jewelry box. But the way she held it made it feel like a weapon. Lorraine placed it on the counter between us, then slowly pushed it toward me. There's a storage unit, she said. West Side Lock and Go, Unit 142. I've had it since 1995. I didn't move. My hand hovered over the key but refused to touch it, like it might burn. Why? I finally asked. What could possibly be in there that you couldn't tell me face to face? Her eyes dropped. It's everything I couldn't say, everything I couldn't let go of. Journals, letters, things from before, from during. During, I echoed. You mean while we were raising kids and paying off the house and building a life together, you were tucking souvenirs of your affairs into a storage unit like trophies? She flinched but didn't deny it. I pocketed the key without another word. I don't remember the drive. I remember gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles cracked. I remember my stomach twisting the closer I got to the storage facility, like my body already knew the truth would be worse than I imagined. The place was tucked behind a strip mall, surrounded by chain-link fencing and security cameras. The clerk barely looked up when I signed in. I didn't say her name. I didn't want anyone to associate me with this. Unit 142 was near the back. The key slid in easily. The lock clicked, the door rattled upward, and I stood there staring into a shrine built out of dust and silence. There were boxes, neatly labeled, letters, photos, poems, receipts. There was even one labeled regrets. I stared at that one the longest, but what caught my eye was the corkboard, hung on the back wall like it had always been there. Taped to it were Polaroids, dozens, some of her, some of strangers, some of rooms I didn't recognize. And right in the center, one photo of our wedding day, crossed out in red ink. That's when my knees gave out. I sank to the floor, surrounded by decades of secrets. In one box marked firsts, I found a stack of letters written on stationery I'd never seen before. The top one was addressed to a man named A. No last name, no return address, just a series of pages filled with emotions I'd never heard from her. Not for me, at least. With you, I felt real. He loves the idea of me, but you love the fire inside me. I wish I could leave, but I'm too much of a coward. I read every word, my hands trembling. It wasn't just the affairs. It was the fact that somewhere out there had been a version of Lorraine who never wanted this life. Never wanted me. I had been her backup plan, her safety net. I don't know how long I sat there. Hours maybe. Time didn't exist inside that unit. Eventually, I pulled out my phone and texted her 3 words. I found it. She responded instantly. Come home. I'll tell you the rest. The rest? There was still more? I picked up the letter she'd written to A and slid it into my jacket. I wasn't sure why. Maybe I just needed proof. Proof that I hadn't dreamed it all. That my pain had paper and ink. As I locked the unit and stepped into the parking lot, a strange calm settled over me. Not peace, never that, but clarity. The kind that comes when the storm has passed, and all that's left is wreckage. And one last confession. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the sky had turned the color of old bruises, muted purples and ash. I sat in the car longer than I should have, gripping the letter in my jacket pocket like it might disappear if I let go. Lorraine's car was parked perfectly, as always. The porch light was on. The house looked just like it had every night for 37 years, which made it all the more surreal. How could everything look so unchanged when everything inside me had shifted into something unrecognizable? When I walked through the door, Lorraine was standing in the living room, hands folded in front of her like she was waiting for a verdict. Her hair was tied back. No makeup, just a plain sweatshirt and jeans. She looked tired, older somehow. She didn't speak at first, just watched me as I placed the letter from the storage unit on the coffee table between us. I read it, I said quietly. Her face didn't change. I figured you would. I didn't sit, couldn't. My legs were restless with rage and disbelief, and something else. Something hollow. Is that who you wanted to be with? She nodded slowly. Yes, but not for the reason you think. Enlighten me. She took a breath like it hurt to exhale. He was the one I thought I'd end up with before I met you, before I even knew who I was. We had this reckless, burning thing. It didn't last long, just a few months, but it left a mark. And after we got married, when things got hard, I started writing to him. Not because I wanted him back, but because he reminded me of who I used to be. Or maybe who I thought I was. I laughed bitterly. So what? You built a secret shrine to your alternate life in a rented box outside town while playing house with me? She stepped closer, but I moved back. She noticed but didn't stop talking. I never mailed those letters. Not a single one. That unit was my confessional, my therapy, and my shame. I stared at her. Then why keep it? Why not burn it all if you were so ashamed? Because I was afraid, she whispered. Afraid that one day you'd see me for who I really was and walk away. And then at least I'd have somewhere to go to remember who I pretended to be. I sat down hard. The weight of it all suddenly hit me in the ribs. You were going to tell me the truth. All of it. Why now, Lorraine? Why after all this time? She hesitated. Because last month, I found a lump that stopped me cold. I haven't told anyone yet. Not even Anna. I'm getting tests done next week. But it made me realize I didn't want to carry this anymore. If I had to leave this world, I didn't want to do it full of lies. Tears welled in her eyes, but I couldn't bring myself to reach for her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this, I said, my voice cracking. You've built an entire museum of betrayal, and now you want me to walk through it like a guest? No, she said. I just want you to see all of me, even the ugly parts, especially the ugly parts, so that if you stay, it's real. Stay. The word felt impossible and cruel, and yet, somewhere inside me, there was still a piece that wanted to believe love could survive exposure. That maybe, just maybe, truth was worth more than illusion. But the next thing she said is what finally shattered everything I thought I had left. There's one more letter, and it's not to him. I turned my head slowly. Who then? She met my eyes. It's to you. And I wrote it the day after our honeymoon. She walked to the bookshelf, the one we'd filled with cookbooks, photo albums, and the occasional book club pick she never actually finished. From behind a row of dusty hardcovers, she pulled out a small sealed envelope. It was yellowed at the edges, clearly old, and on the front, in handwriting that barely looked like hers anymore, was my name. Curtis. She didn't speak as she handed it to me. I turned it over, hesitating. After everything, another letter felt like a cruel joke. But something in her face told me this one was different. Maybe it wasn't about lies or regrets. Maybe this one was real. So I opened it. The paper inside was delicate, folded twice. The writing was rushed, emotional, and strangely vulnerable. Curtis, if you're reading this, it means I either got too scared to tell you the truth, or life decided it was time. So here it is, the only truth that matters. I married you because I loved you. Deeply, desperately. I know I have parts of me that are broken. Parts I've hidden even from myself. But from the moment you held my hand on that ridiculous paddleboat in the park and made that dumb duck pun, I knew I was safe. Not perfect, safe. If I ever betray that, if I ever lose sight of what we are, it won't be because I stopped loving you. It'll be because I didn't know how to love myself enough to feel worthy of you. I hope you can forgive me for the things I can't yet imagine. And if you ever doubt it, if anything ever clouds what we had, just know. You were always the home I came back to, even when I wandered. I didn't realize I was crying until the ink blurred on the last line. The room was completely silent, except for the sound of Lorraine softly crying across from me. She didn't speak. She just waited. And slowly, I stood up, walked over, and for the first time in what felt like years, I held her. Not because it fixed everything. Not because I had all the answers. But because despite the lies, the pain, the years of buried truths, the letter reminded me of something she hadn't said in months, maybe years, that beneath all the brokenness, there had been love. Maybe it wasn't the perfect kind. Maybe it never would be. But it was ours. We sat like that until the sun faded behind the trees. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like a stranger in my own home. Not everything can be undone. But sometimes the truth, no matter how ugly, is what gives us a chance to begin again. Thanks for being with us through this emotional journey on Reddit Confessions. What would you have done if you were Curtis? Could you forgive? Would you stay? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if the story moved you even a little. We'll see you in the next one.